Welcome to this video for round 7 of the candidates tournament, and it's Andreikin playing white against Topalov. Yeah, Andreikin having a pretty miserable tournament, not winning a single game yet, and he even was in trouble in some of the draws. If you think against the game against Anand, this was tough, but okay, it was not totally lost, but yeah, he's not having a great tournament. And Topalov, to be honest, also doesn't have a good one. He's got 50% now by beating Kramnik yesterday out of some dangerous preparation where Kramnik really fell apart in the opening. Still, he's on 50%, which is not really great if you want to qualify. So he needs to win some games for sure to catch up with Arnold and Aronian. Yeah, let's see what's happened here. Yeah, we get to a Queen's Gambit declined, and yeah, it's a bit of a yeah, not a surprising choice by Topalov, but still we could maybe reckon with something a bit more confrontational, let's say King's Indian or whatever, to risk something. But okay, he's playing playing the Queen's Gambit declined. It would have been interesting to see what he would have done after knight c3, probably c6 to go to the semi-Slav to get a fighting position. It's a bit more interesting than bishop e7, for example. But this didn't happen because Andreikin now played bishop to g5. Yeah, this is somewhat of a of a special, I cannot pronounce that, specialty, something that he's playing as a surprise weapon here and there. He beat Kramnik with this move last year in Dortmund. Andreikin has a very good score against Kramnik. He's got a plus score if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and this move bishop g5 is quite interesting. It especially interesting if black is not intending to go to a classical variation with bishop e7. If black plays bishop e7, we pretty much almost all the time will transpose to, let's say here, the Laska or Tatakova variation. But okay, this was certainly not in Topalov's interest. If you want to have a somewhat sharper battle, you need to do something else. Okay, you can play c6, as mentioned. It is maybe what Topalov wanted to do in case of knight c3, but here white does not need to play this move. He can, for instance, also play queen c2 with an interesting game and far less sharp. Yeah, Topalov played h6. This is another idea against this early bishop g5 that deserves attention. The main idea is that now white cannot so easily play bishop h4. You can, but after bishop b4 it gets somewhat tricky. Now knight c3 is in fact a bit questionable because black can play various things, but one of them is in fact this kind of stuff, which is very sharp, and with h5 coming, something like that, intending h4, winning the bishop. Yeah, it's quite strange, but interesting for black. Bishop h4 is not considered to be really good. He took on f6. This also happened in the game against Kramnik last year. And now knight bd2. One of the ideas of this setup, you have not committed the knight yet to c3, so knight bd2 is possible. This shouldn't be something too brilliant. I mean, the knight on d2 is not overwhelmingly well placed, but it leads to unexplored play that still is fairly complicated. Yeah, Kramnik played g6 in this position and then fianchettoed, which is very similar to the Moscow variation of the semi-Slav. But Topalov plays another move. He plays bishop e7. Not a move that, at least for my taste, looks so natural, with somehow, yeah, cutting off the queen's natural retreat square. But it turns out to be quite a good setup. Now played queen c2, Andreikin. I'm not so sure if, yeah, or how white's player can be improved upon, because only really quickly black gets a good position here at c5. Topalov's got the pair of bishops. This is nice to have. And he tries to quickly open up the center with c5. Yeah, to be honest, I already think that black has a very comfortable game here. Maybe e3, queen c2. This combination of moves didn't really fit so well, especially the queen on c2. We will see now why. Yeah, what is white supposed to do now? Andreikin took on c5. Here also could have taken on d5. Another possibility. Here black can, amongst others, simply recapture. Now, this is also an idea, but simply taking here is good. Takes and bishop e6. Yeah, now black is going to play rook c8 and then get at the c5 pawn. Something like that, for example, something like that is already very good for black. He already has got the bishops and a good development. If you give him something like that, let's say here, it gets serious already. Black is very much better here. It's already a bit tricky. He took on c5, and now knight d7 was played. Yeah, which is a fine move, but also knight a6 was a possibility. This gives the additional idea for what to take. But okay, knight d7 is not to be criticized. White took on d5. Yeah, and here is the first spot where Topalov could have made things a bit easier. Let's say he's playing in a very complicated fashion, pretty much typical of his style. But knight c5 was an interesting alternative. He recaptured on d5, but knight c5 is just okay for black. Yeah, I mean, okay, I think black is somewhat better, to be honest. If white is greedy and captures a pawn, it is really a great development for black. Something like that was even mentioned in the press conference here. And Topalov in this position gave the line e4, bishop h7 with compensation. That's true, black has compensation. The computer, however, even comes up with this move, knight takes e4, and black is just winning. Or now winning is too much, but black is certainly better here. The idea is this position, where of course this hangs, and there's also queen g2. And this is now very tough to defend. If white wants to keep the knight here, what are you going to do after that? Yeah, and you don't really have anything like that. It's always g2 hanging. White is in, oops, this was a bit too much. White is after that here in big trouble. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe white should play yeah, a quiet move here like that, and then try to castle. But there's bishop f5 already. Maybe this first. And here, yeah, black has a good game here. Knight e6, for example, fighting for this. He's just very quick with developing, and he's got two bishops. White, of course, can claim that the isolated d5 pawn is a weakness, but yeah, that's not so important. Knight c5 was a simple solution. He took on d5 with the pawn. Not a bad move, but it is simpler to just take on c5 with the knight. Okay, knight b3. White is keeping this pawn for the moment, and now a5. This was obviously the idea. Yeah, if white now is not playing a4 like Andreikin did, yeah, if he is not doing that, black will simply regain the pawn with good play. Let's say something like that. Oops, here. and knight takes. Yeah, this is just comfortable for black, but I was just thinking, how good is this really? Yeah, in comparison with a4. The thing is, he played a4, and maybe he should have actually avoided a4. If I now think of it, yeah, the position that I had shown a couple of moments ago, like this position, that's certainly very okay for black, but I actually would prefer that as white to the game. Yeah, well, Andreikin played it in a very sharp manner. He played a4, just stopping a5, a4, and yeah, this now leads to a very, very complicated play, which I'm not sure about really. Topalov played b6. This is good. Basically the only move to justify all that. And Andreikin is playing c6, advancing the pawn. That's also the only move. You cannot take on b6, for example. This just opens up all the floodgates. Check. I mean, black will, let's say here, and then, I don't know, here, get the pawn back and have an overwhelming position. c6 is just better, getting this pawn to c6, very strong pawn. Check. Yeah, and now this check. Yeah, and here white really doesn't have much of a choice. You don't want to put your knights in a pin here. Let's say this, for example. There is again this possibility, and white is in big trouble. Note that you won't even keep the pawn. This is even more clumsy, I think. Yeah, with a good game for black. He played king d1. not nice, but okay, it was necessary. Knight c5 and knight to d4. This was a position that Andreikin went for, or aimed for, when he played a4. And yeah, but I'm not really sure. The thing is, it is obviously very, very sharp. White has won a pawn, this pawn on c6, which also limits black's pieces in some way. And the pawn can also be always protected by bishop b5. On the other hand, what is your king doing on d1? Not a pretty sight. However, there's one feature of the position that is very much in white's favor. The position is easier for white to play, simply because of the fact that white's next move are pretty self-evident. You will go, as already shown here in the picture, you will put your bishop on b5 to secure the pawn, and the next idea is to walk the king over to a2. And on a2 it is relatively safe. In this same time, it's not so clear what black should do. I mean, it is clear that he should have some kind of compensation. This is a nice piece, for example. Yeah, you can maybe get this pawn back at some point. Yeah, and the king is not great on d1. But what exactly are you going to play? I think that the computer suggestion here is in fact a very good one. The computer wants to play bishop g4 here, Houdini 4. The idea is that after bishop b5, you're going to go knight to e6. And what this basically does is fighting for this blockade square. And if you manage to lift the blockade from d4, you maybe at the end will get to the king. Something like that, for example, just to show. And then intending to play d4 at some point. This is, I believe, completely unclear. I mean, I have no idea how to judge this position. It's just very messy. But yeah, I mean, black is I think in reasonable shape. The pawn on c6 is not going to promote anytime soon, and well, you have play. Topalov went to e4, yeah, with the knight, not fighting for d4. He just lets this knight on d4 stay there. His idea was entirely different, and we see that in the game. Bishop b5, g5. This was Topalov's idea, a very, very aggressive advance. Yeah, he intends to push g4 and get to the f2 pawn. yeah, it's an understandable. I mean, it's easy to understand the plan, but it seems that ultimately this is flawed because of yeah, a relatively simple idea. To be honest, I'm very surprised that he went for this, as it is not so difficult to play now what Andreikin played. He played h3. Okay, this is kind of a knee-jerk reaction almost. You don't want to allow simply g4. Yeah, and here Topalov played h5, and I think after that, to be honest, that's gone. After h5, you cannot save black anymore. It's just too weak, g5 and h5. The problem is that the general idea that he has g4 is that simply not working. Andreikin now played king c1, yeah, completing this plan. And the problem is black cannot play g4. That was the whole point of everything, but you now simply ignore that as white. This is the problem. You can take the knight here, but how are you going to ever survive this position with the rook coming to g1? This is just deadly. White will have a deadly attack here. Black has completely exposed his king. This is the problem. The whole idea is something that white can simply allow. h5 and g4, and after that you're getting, yeah, black is getting himself mated and not vice versa. And yeah, the thing is, okay, you cannot play g4. What are you playing? Yeah, he played bishop c5, king b1. This was clear. Still, you cannot play g4. And if you cannot do that, what is black's plan? He's got all pieces misplaced now. There is nothing like bishop g4 or any kind of piece play. Yeah, he played rook e8, king a2, and now rook a7. Yeah, it does not look brilliant, but what is black supposed to do? White has a perfect blockade on d4. This is covered, and there's no way really to make any sort of progress. Rook to d1, king a bit of a mysterious move, to be honest. But I think Topalov was already pretty desperate. He couldn't really find an idea. Rook h to f1, covering here so that maybe you can move the knight and push the f pawn. He went back with the king. King a1. I'm not so sure about that move, but it's not any problem. White has lots of time. Bishop f8, and now knight e2. Yeah, now we see the final point. Yeah, maybe he played king a1 because of bishop e6 here, that he didn't want to allow any sort of d4 check threats. We see now the final point. White is going to play h4 and make sure that f4 is available for the knight. And this happened, h4 and knight here, and this is just terrible. Topalov played king g8. I need to switch off these messages. King g8 and knight takes d5. Yeah, and here Topalov just resigned. It's everything's falling apart. We go here. Yeah, you can even take e4 and
check.
Get the queen back here with the fork. Yeah, there's multiple ways to win. Yeah, it looks like a complete disaster, this game, for Topalov. It's simply, this idea, g5, h5, was simply totally faulty. It looks, I mean, black must play aggressively. It cannot just sit and wait in this position. But it simply seems like to be the wrong plan. For the simple fact that if you even realize it, it doesn't do anything because you open up your own king. Yeah, so at the end, a pretty drastic loss for Topalov, who is back on -1 after this game. So he lost 2 games, won this game. Certainly an important win for him against Kramnik, but for the whole tournament standings, he's on -1 and basically out of it. It's very hard to imagine that he would be able to catch up to the leaders. He would need to win 3 games just to be even with Arnold before the round, if you consider that. very tough to believe that you can do that. Yeah, and Andreikin has scored his first win. Certainly important for him. He yeah, he's a player with not so much experience on the absolute highest level. He has played and won the Russian championships, for example, and stuff like that. But this is simply the ultimate test, this kind of tournament here. Just top players, double round robin, very tough. And it's certainly important for him to have won a game in the first turn of this event. And -1 is, to be honest, not a bad score. I mean, certainly this is the kind of tournament where only first place really counts. Huh? But okay, in terms of rating, for example, with -1, he's simply gaining rating points. He's playing above his expected score, so it's not like he's doing something terrible. Yeah, all right. I hope you enjoyed this game. Thanks for watching.